Yes.
the immigration, because this is a very, very big concern right now.
Yes, yes. You know, Father, as you mentioned, each chapter of the book begins with a virtue and a principle from our social doctrine. And I quote the Catechism. So this isn't my definition. I'm not trying to say, oh, this is how we should understand this virtue. But I give a virtue and I give a principle from our social doctrine, again, with citations from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, in order to help us to think as believers as we approach these moral issues. Otherwise, we end up trying to speak with the language of the unbelievers in a secular world about moral truth. That's not helpful.
No.
So we have to begin with what are our understanding, what is the objective understanding of virtue and moral principles. Once we have that, then we can make this distinction that you're pointing us to, which is there are moral issues that are absolute and there are moral issues that are prudential. And this is important.
And by
very
prudential,
important.
what do you mean?
Exactly. Okay, so let's go to the virtue of prudence. So the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us that prudence assesses a situation and looks for what is the greatest good. Now, let me clarify. That does not mean the greatest beneficial to me. Right? I don't look and say, what's the best, for me?
What do I get out of it?
Exactly. It's what is the best morally good in this situation, which sometimes may require sacrifice on our parts. So there are prudential moral issues. And that distinction is so important because oftentimes what we hear from some more liberal-leaning theologians within our tradition is, oh, well, you support the unborn, but what are you doing about people on the border? What about immigration? Okay, well, now they're comparing apples and oranges, and they know as trained theologians that they're doing this, that they're comparing apples and oranges within our moral tradition. So there are absolute issues, for example, abortion, euthanasia, issues of sexuality, that are clear. As the church would
and
say.
you see them in the commandments. Thou shalt not kill.
Exactly.
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yes.
Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness.
Yep. And our moral tradition calls them intrinsically evil, which means there is no circumstance or intention that could ever justify them. Mm-hmm. So it's clear. It's absolute, right? Okay.
And your name is not on the list of exception clauses about thou shalt not commit adultery. Your name's not there.
Right, exactly. In light of what your heart might think or feel, right? So we have these absolute issues. So, for example, abortion, euthanasia, and so on. But then we have prudential issues. So we're speaking about immigration. This can shock people that the church's moral teachings can be applied to laws and public policy of immigration, and believers can reasonably disagree on what should be the laws or the public policies, and both can be within the church's teachings on moral issues and on the moral issue of immigration. Because here it's a prudential issue, it's assessing, and there can be disagreements. I think this is the best, greatest good. I think this is the greatest good. I think this. And if you look at the Catechism of the Catholic Church, what do we find? Very interestingly, the number one responsibility of the public authority, as is determining immigration, is the well-being of the citizens under its care. Mm-hmm. Now that's very important because, but what about the people in other countries? Okay, these are people that we have to be worried about as well and concerned about through solidarity as Catholic Christians. But then subsidiarity, this is a principle of our social doctrine, kicks in, which is, okay, yes, I have to have a heart for all, but subsidiarity says I have to pay attention to the people that are right here in front of me, my family, my neighborhood, and by extension, my nation. So I have to take care of the people first that are here. And then I try to provide whatever help I can to the rest. You can imagine a husband and father coming home and saying, I'm sorry, kids, you don't have anything to eat, but the family down the street that's struggling, they've got some really good groceries that I gave them. Right? Say, what is wrong with you? No, you feed your family first, right?
Right.
And then as you're able, and sometimes you can sacrifice in order to provide food to your neighbors who are in need. So with immigration, there can be very different understandings of laws, of what should be the level of legal immigrants, what should be the approach to illegal immigrants, and so on. And again, in prudential issues, you can have very devout, strong Catholics who can disagree, and both can be within the church's moral teachings.
Yeah, they'll be looking at, different, parts of the issue. That's one of the advantages of living in a democracy. You can take and look at the information and try to work with the information you have back and forth and think through what's going to help your nation and these immigrants to the best of our ability,
Yes.
given the limitations of our resources.
Absolutely.
No matter where you live, if you have limited resources, what can you use for what?
Exactly.
These are questions of thinking,
Yes.
reason, prudence.
Yes.
That's key. I just want to make mention that